We are back, finally, in Northern Valley. Yes, it's been quite a while, and if you watched the little, I called it 21.5 of the series here, it was a little bit of a live build, but yeah, to start this episode off, all we're doing is kind of doing a little bit more detail work around what we did in that live video that I did last time for Northern Valley. Now, of course, we are back to the normal format, and this is the format that's going to stay for the foreseeable future, but yeah, time-lapse and then go into the live portion, and I will say that there's part of me that is very happy to be back in Northern Valley, back in City Skylines, but the other part of me got really spoiled by Planet Coaster and how that game runs so smooth, and this game is very choppy, but you'll see that when we get into the live portion. It's virtually a slideshow, but we'll go through it. At this point in this series, I've just kind of, I guess, devoted this to a picture painter, if you will. I mean, we do a little bit of stuff with like the actual game and logistics and stuff, although honestly we haven't really done that much in this series, but we will when we get into building the oh so requested airport. You guys really want to see an airport. I am getting to that, but I also really want to do a harbor, so that's pretty cool. But for the most part, this series has become how pretty of a city can we make? Because my computer, frankly, is it's struggling. It's a lot of YouTubers struggle when they put this many details into their city. But yeah, actually, speaking of the kind of city management side of things, we're going back to what we did a couple episodes ago, and this whole kind of highway junction that ends down in the industrial park. We are actually going through and kind of optimizing this a little bit. We needed to do something because I took a minute to you actually just saw me go through with the new patch. We can actually set up stop signs and streetlights natively into the game, vanilla, if you will. But yeah, I noticed that this was probably one of the worst areas in the city. And it's because everybody was trying to turn onto the highway here. And since this game doesn't have a turn on red function, no one could do it, and they were just kind of stuck at that red light there until it turned green, and then they could get onto the highway. So we've bypassed that, and those are the little tweaks that I kind of miss in this game. We haven't done a lot of that in this series, but when you actually play City Skylines like for real instead of just in Sandbox, you, I think, tend to focus more on things like just traffic control and getting your city to the most efficient, I guess, possible it could be, but we haven't done that a lot, and I feel like at some point we're gonna have to kind of look at that a little bit. Although, that said, I mean, we don't really have a huge population. At this point, we only have like 25,000 people living around this area, so traffic really isn't that big of a deal. Plus, I think we've done really good at, we've been really good at getting the public transportation kind of sorted out. So I think for the most part, our traffic issues haven't really been issues, but then again, I guess we could always look at that when we build more. And I want to say this is the probably the last part of the downtown, and I use air quotes even though you guys can't see it, but this really, it's like the higher density stuff. This is probably it. I mean, we might do a little bit here and there, just give some like depth to the suburbs a little bit, but yeah, this is the last true, I guess, downtown type area that we're kind of finishing out here in this episode. And of course, we've been, as I've been ranting on, we've been building the road system for this area, and we've been doing a little bit of zoning, and you could see that the same apartments that we had across the main road there are now gonna, I guess, grow over here. And this is gonna be kind of weird because we're gonna have to eventually end this kind of somehow and fade this into the like low density stuff. So it's gonna be a little strange trying to figure out how to actually do that. I know I'm gonna actually go to like Google Maps and try to figure out how real cities kind of do that. So it doesn't look like there's just like massive buildings and then little tiny houses. So that's what's coming up in the future of the series and of the city, I guess. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in the live portion. What you've been watching me do is just kind of, we've taken that industrial park and spread it across that bridge, and it's right on that highway. And we actually need to name this highway, and you guys haven't really had to name too much lately, but maybe you guys can name that highway in the comments for this video. We're working on it right now. We need to do that, because now we can name streets, and oh man, we have a lot of streets that we can name. So, I don't know if I'm gonna go through and name all of the streets in the city, but maybe the main roads we can do that with and have you guys kind of have some input. Maybe I'll do something over on my Discord, just get the Discord kind of active. But yeah, look out for that. But yes, we've pulled this industrial park over here, and we are just kind of detailing around the area a little bit. You saw a lot of trucks being placed, and I love placing trucks in the industrial area because that's where the trucks would be. So yeah, just having trucks kind of idle really makes like a little bit more of a live feel in that area. And this build, I think there were a few unique areas that just had like some sort of personality to it. So as I was going through, getting back into this game, because I hadn't played it in so long, I wanted to create like little areas of personality, if you will. So just trying to get things like, you saw the back of that industrial area, or the industrial building, with some parking spaces, and I put the cars kind of like at weird angles, just because I figured it wasn't like a public parking area. It was like some guys at the shop pull up and they just park, and they don't really care to get into spaces. They just wanted to kind of get there, get to work, clock in, get their money, and leave. So just little areas like that in this whole kind of build is what I was kind of going for, because to be honest, to be fair, it's kind of a generic build over here. It was kind of just trying to fill out a little bit of space, but we just had to, I guess, take the same kind of feel that we had in the other side of that main road there, and then bring it over here. And this was the last of this kind of like high-density suburb. So, I don't know, just detailing it. I didn't go super crazy with detailing, but there is a lot of like nature that I've thrown behind some of these buildings, like I did in the last area. So, yeah, I don't know. There was just a few parking spaces that we ended up making, but a lot of nature just kind of thrown between some buildings, just to give it that little bit of, like, if you zoom out, you can see that there are some green spaces. It wasn't just like all concrete jungle, if you will. But yeah, we go through and do a little bit more with the decal work, and again, I've resigned the hope that frame rate would be okay. It's definitely a losing battle, so putting as many decals in the world as possible, I guess, is something that I've accepted. And if we just put more decals in, at least it'll look good when it's paused. I guess that's a mentality I have moving forward. But yeah, some of these little awkward spaces in between some of these, like, we have like a triangular road section here. So just filling out some of these with parking was probably the most viable option. So that's what we did. And of course, we go through and put a bunch of little cars, of course, like we have been doing throughout the city. But you actually saw me put one car not in a parking space. It's a car that looks like it's coming out of this parking lot and it's about to turn into the street. So that's another one of those little personality type areas that was prevalent through this build. So it's one of those things that, again, you just don't really notice unless you really, really look and see what's going on in the city. So yeah, we're just going through now and doing more parking, just trying to fill out these areas. They're super awkward, and I didn't want to just cram buildings into this space. So the best I could do was just kind of fill it as kind of like a public space. So a lot of flower beds and a lot of parking just to take up that concrete. You actually noticed probably that I went through with the painter tool and just painted a lot of just concrete all over the place. So yeah, just that was another one of those things. Trying to work some green space in there countered that whole kind of just laying down pavement everywhere. But we're moving on to the highway, and this is, yeah, the highway. I was gonna say the turnpike, but no, that is actually on the other side of the railroad tracks. But we're actually detailing this out just a little bit. Now, when I went in to do this episode, I wasn't planning on doing this. It was kind of one of those things that I like stepped back and I was like, wait, this really needs something. I mean, it looks just like when you put like roads down and railroads down, it looks very vanilla. So just trying to get as much detail work into these areas that I may have forgotten about up until now is something that I want to I guess, do moving forward throughout the city. So yeah, I like the fact that these walls that I've placed have now trapped this railroad in. So obviously it creates a nice barrier for maybe like if there was a car that like went out of control, it wouldn't just go onto the railroad tracks and like get crushed by a train. A little bit of a retaining wall, and then of course these chain link walls. And I guess the mentality behind the chain link, the double wall here, is because I wanted to fill this out with some nature. And I guess my thinking was maybe it was somewhat like a nature area in that maybe animals could have been there, like they could have homes there, even though it's really limited in like trees and foliage and stuff. But I figured that any sort of like groundhogs or deer or anything that were living in these very few amounts of trees wouldn't be able to go ahead and run onto the railroad tracks. So that's why we have that kind of double wall situation down there. Again, it's one of those details that even zoomed out here you can't really notice, but it's just one of those things that for the pictures, that's all that really counts right now, I guess. But we're going through with some of these rocks that we did near the river, and we're just kind of carrying these through. Now, obviously, I couldn't get the rocks kind of up close to the railroad, like in between the railroad and the highway or the turnpike, because they're just big clusters. I really didn't feel like putting a ton of individual rocks down there. So just kind of moving on toward like this junction, the highway junction, just having a little bit of this kind of carryover from the river out to here, I think really adds a cool touch over here. And you're actually seeing me right now do something fairly major, and that is take the rock, I guess, texture. I think it's rock or rubble or dirt or something, and the little texture that goes down by the railroad tracks. And we're actually using the ruined texture. So the railroad isn't, I guess, on rock per se anymore, but like when you take a step back, and we'll do this when we get toward the live portion, which is coming up shortly here. When you step back and look at these railroad tracks, it looks a lot better, I think. I mean, the rocks that are painted under the track, I really don't like them, and I think it's because they're so brightly like colored yellow. But just replacing this gives it a completely new dynamic over here, and I guess we'll see what you guys think when we go live right now. All right, we are live down in Northern Valley, and I'm gonna pause the game, and even when I pause the game, the frame rate is just terrible. So guys, just bear with me, because yeah, we got some stuff to go around. Maybe if I zoom out here a little bit, it'll help, but I'm not really sure. But yeah, we finished up the time lapse with this whole taking the rocks away, and I'm not really sure if I explained that really well, but I think you get the point. So by default, this gravel texture is what is placed underneath the railroad. So instead of that, we went to this ruined texture, and I don't know, I like this a little bit better down in this area at least, because I think it just gives it more of like a almost rundown kind of railroad feel, even though it's one of the more main railroad areas of the city, I guess is a way to say that. But yeah, I just feel like it fits the kind of scenery around the tracks a little bit more. Now, I did put some actual like decals down throughout here, just little bits of dirt like splattered around everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but just in select areas. And I don't know, I guess I'm looking to you guys for an opinion on this. Do we bring this gravel back, or do we leave this as kind of like a ruined, like, it wouldn't be like natural grass, but it's more of like a patchy grass, wild grass, I don't know. Just some little bit of undergrowth growing on throughout here. I don't know. That's something that I guess I'm looking to you guys for in the comments. But yeah, past that, let's go ahead and talk about this specific little area down here. And actually, before I mention this, I did go through the entire city, and I actually went through and made sure all of our streets are properly junctioned up, if you will. So if we go to junctions here, we can actually flip all of these. So we can have, like, this could be a street light, or you could take that off and have a four-way stop, or a three-way stop, or two-way, or one-way, or no stop, which I don't know how no stop works, but yeah, for the most part, I just kind of used logic going through here. So you'll notice, like, the main roads here, the main intersections obviously need a traffic light. But like this main 4-lane road here with the median actually has no stop sign until you get to the next main road. Now, this is the way that I think real cities are kind of planned out. Now, obviously there are exceptions. Like if this were a very, very busy road and this were also a very, very busy road, you kind of want that to be a street light so the flow of traffic was more even, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. For the most part, just using logic throughout here, putting streetlights at roads that I felt were going to have a lot of traffic, and we didn't want to back up all of the traffic with the stop signs. Those have streetlights. The rest of them pretty much have stop signs. And actually, it's funny that this roundabout was really screwed up. When I went to the traffic view of the city, it was terrible. It was even worse than it is now. But now that we have the kind of continuous flow of traffic around here using these stop signs, it kind of helped it a little bit. Now, there are still some obvious issues, I guess, going on. This over here is actually horrid, so I don't really know what's going on here. Maybe we should take a look at the junctions just to see. So we got some stop signs going on here, and that seems to be what's kind of the issue here. Also, the issue is probably that this is a 5-way stop, like a 5-way street light, and is kind of probably getting backed up here. So if I take these 2 stop signs away, I'm not sure that that's going to do all that much for us. It's probably more the bottleneck being over here. Again, I'm not really sure how to fix that, but this episode is probably, I don't want to drag on and talk about intersections. I just want you guys to know that that is one thing that I did, and I cut a little bit of that out. Well, I cut a lot of that out. They're just going around in that screen probably wasn't all that entertaining. But yeah, so what we did in this episode is continue on with Manor Heights down here. So you'll notice that Boulderwood, if I go to the Districts tab, we'll see Boulderwood actually kind of come up here. So I'm going to fix that now. The rest of this is Manor Heights right here. But yeah, Boulderwood is going to start there, and this is subject to change again at some point as we build in the next episode. Now, I actually have a plan for this area in the next episode, and that is we're going to put some sort of like shopping center throughout here just because it's right off the highway. And you'll notice like big box stores like Walmart's and Dick's and those kind of stores want to be in like high traffic areas. So this is a prime spot for some highway facing shopping centers, strip mall type areas. So yes, we'll do that in the next one. We'll probably end up blending some of this in. Again, I talked about this a little bit. I honestly don't really know how I'm going to blend the high density into the low density. And moving forward, this is going to be all low density out here. So I want to kind of take the road design into account here. I want the grids to kind of look like the highway split them in half almost. Like you'll notice this a lot in American cities at least, where if you go and you look at like downtown or like suburban areas of a downtown where the highway is, you'll notice streets that kind of like go up to the highway, stop, and then they kind of continue past the highway in the same, what looks to be the same street. And a big thing that happened was when we were getting the highway system, they kind of just bought out properties and just demolished roads and just slapped a highway through. So there was really a big split in suburbs rather. So that's kind of what I want to almost accomplish in the rest of this area. So I think we can pull it off. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm looking forward to doing it because it's going to be kind of interesting. Anyway, moving on to what we were doing in the build portion of this, it's pretty simple. There was very minimal detailing that went into this area, apart from, I don't know, there was a lot of nature that went in, and kind of meticulously, just to throw some trees behind some of these, in these like alleyways that are behind all of these high rises. So a little bit of tree blending in this area, and then of course we did the trees on the highway and the railroad area, and just a little bit of just little things like these parking lots that we now have. And this is one of those things that I was talking about, the personality. Like if you look from a distance here, it looks like this Jeep's about to pull out and go this way. But in reality, it's just a prop placed down there. So it's just one of those like little miniature things that I placed just to make the city feel a little bit more alive. Now, of course, we got the cracks in the streets and it looks great. And this is another one of those things where I placed this truck here like it was loading this bay. And of course, it's like this company doesn't really have a true loading bay. So they just back the truck up to this little dock. And of course, they have to block the parking lot from people parking there. So of course, there were a couple people that got here early in the morning before, and they had to have the truck come in and block it off so nobody else parks. So a lot of people end up parking down here. But yeah, it's just little things like that I love about this city. And I try to do this like as much as I can just to kind of keep things interesting. I mean, you could very, very easily just build this block and just throw it together, and it just looks like, okay, it's just an industrial park and then some lower income housing almost. But just a little bit of personality in your builds in this game goes so long, goes such a long way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, before we kind of wrap this up, let's go back to the dam and back to this small area. And yeah, I actually had somebody comment on, I think, the last video that I did here, 21.5. They were saying maybe put some shops up here, try to get some people up here. So that's what we did. And hopefully this entices some people to go ahead and use the sky lift and come up here and kind of hang out. There are actually some people walking around here. But yeah, these shops are just kind of here. A little plaza on the dam. I feel like this would be a very, very, like, rich area for shops. Like, this is a total tourist trap. And I feel like the rent on these commercial properties would just be really, really high. Alright, guys, that about wraps it up for this episode. Let me know if you liked it with a thumbs up. Also, let me know in the comments, what should we name this highway? And also, do you like the ruined texture under this railroad track, or did you like the gravel look better? So guys, let me know, and until next time, I'll see you back here in Northern Valley.